This video is brought to you by the Deck of Many and their Big Bad Booklet series. Hello and welcome back to the Gallant Goblin. Today we're taking a look at the new Starfinder book, the Starship Operations Manual, hitting stores today. Many thanks to Paizo for sending us a review copy. I was really curious to read through this book as I feel like that it had its work cut out for it. Starship combat in Starfinder has probably been the most controversial and problematic aspect of the game since it launched. For longtime players of D&D and Pathfinder, it's something completely different than what they may be used to. And from hearing different accounts, it seems like a lot of folks had a wide variety of experiences with it. Some groups have grokked it without any problem and they're ready to expand their options. Others have found it difficult to wrap their heads around. For those groups, sometimes combat devolves into each player doing the same thing on each turn without any fanfare or storytelling, and it just turns into one big slog. So I wanted to see how the Starship Operations Manual handled these issues, if it would at all. Happily, yes, this book clearly has options for both types of gaming groups. The first half of the book really expands your options for customizing your ship, while the second half attempts to help GMs run Starship combat and Starship-based campaigns while keeping the focus on cinematic storytelling. Let's start by looking at some of our expanded Starship options. Now, I would recommend slowly introducing these to your players as they get accustomed to Starship operations and customization, instead of overwhelming your players with a Sears catalog of options right out the door. First, we get alternate options for interstellar navigation for ships that do not have drift engines. Now, these are intended more for NPC use, interesting ships that your crew may encounter in their travels. The Knights of Golarion have massive cathedral ships with Archon drives, which are fueled by Iomede's divine power and prayer. And there are elemental engines that enable plane-hopping interstellar travel. They also introduced fold gates, which have a pretty long history in science fiction. There are several more, including hell drives and shadow engines. You can really introduce some interesting and diverse ships and encounters with these options. The Starship Operations Manual introduces a host of new weapons as well. We have electronic countermeasure modules operated by the science officer to throw off enemy ships, and they have massive spinal mount weapons found only on your super-colossal ships. They also introduce weapons that can anchor foes, fire automatically, leverage a ship's shields into a ram, cause terror in a ship's crew, among many other properties. While no new Starship roles were added in this book, new actions for existing roles were. The gunner can now deploy drones and lay down mines. The science officer can activate those electronic countermeasures for a number of different purposes and teleport the ships short distances by the use of so-called warp pucks. Your pilot can now ram an enemy ship, and there's a number of new melee weapons you can add to your ship as well to turn your battles into space-based editions of like BattleBots or Robot Wars. A whole slew of alternate armors are added if you find straight-up shields to be a little dull. You can layer a ship up with ablative armor. You can replace your normal shields, which just absorb damage, with deflectors that reduce damage from incoming attacks while increasing your starship's armor class and target lock. You can also fortify your hull and reinforce your bulkheads. The book also introduces the option of turning rare materials into starship parts. For example, early in the Dead Sun's adventure path, the players find a supply of a material called no-qual. In the adventure as written, it's mainly just like a big, heavy thing that they have to lug around with them until they find a chance to sell it for credits. But with this book, the magic dampening powers of no-qual can be incorporated into your ship's armor to throw off enemy spellcasters and mystical weapons, or you can add it to your sensors, which will cause them to interfere with enemy sensors. Information like this is provided for 6 other materials like adamantine and absium. They also tell you how many build points a group needs to spend in order to add these to their ships. Next, we have whole new starship systems that your crew may gain access to when visiting alien planets or space stations. For example, maybe they take a detour to the undead planet of Eox and do a favor there for a well-connected necrovite. In return, the necrovite allows them to purchase an arcane mortuary for their ship, which will allow the crew's resident necromancer to turn corpses into beefy undead soldiers under her command. Or if they don't have a necromancer, maybe they prefer a corpse recycler, which turns corpses into parts to create necrographs, which are body augments that you can put on. There's all sorts of new options here, from cryo chambers to breaching pods to drop pods to ghost drives that will turn your ship insubstantial for a time. This is one of my favorite chapters of the book, and it really expands your starship's utility outside of just starship combat. There's even a consciousness uplink drive that allows a crew member to interface directly with a starship, with accompanying benefits and drawbacks. While you may be able to more efficiently control the vessel, let's just say that you don't want to be connected when your sensors suffer a critical hit, as it may cause you to lose an eye. They also introduced a system called Training Interface Modules, or TEM, to allow characters to use their class features or feats to aid in starship combat. So let's just say you have the Deadly Aim feat, and you assume the gunner role during starship combat. And previously, that feat wasn't going to be of any use to you here. But if you install the correct TEM, you can choose to take a -2 penalty to your gunnery check for that round. And if you do, the first of your attacks to hit that round deals additional damage equal to your base attack bonus. These TEMs are available for a large number of class features like biohacks, trick attacks, and primary fighting styles, as well as dozens of feats, including Cleave, Improved Initiative, even Climbing Master, and Fast Talk. And this goes a long way into solving one of the problems with starship combat, where characters weren't able to take advantage of their character builds. Rules are also provided for building super-colossal starships that can hold up to 100,000 people. And there are guidelines for GMs to create starship-sized monsters and creatures that the ships may encounter along the lines of Encounter at Farpoint. And a few sample creatures are detailed to get those creative juices flowing for you. They also have special space hazards like asteroids and gravity fields and radiation zones and wormholes and strange drift phenomenon. The next part of the book really expands your options for starship combat. And this is where I might be careful about what to introduce and when. Starship combat can be a complex thing for folks, but it can also get repetitive and dull if not played correctly. So slowly introducing these new options without overwhelming your players is important, but doing it quickly enough so they don't get too bored and kind of balance those might be a little tricky. We get rules for boarding starships and critical effects from rolling a nat 20 for your crew member actions. So for example, you'll have a different critical effect for your captain depending on whether she's demanding or encouraging or giving a moving speech or giving orders or taunting her enemy. You have rules for starship chases, and you have obstacles that can be introduced during those chases. For regular combat, new rules are provided for getting your crew down to a planet with or without drop pods. There's starship damage and repair options, information about flying your ship inside planetary atmospheres, or having your crew pilot separate fighters in combat rather than taking on roles in one larger starship. You can make your battles more like Star Wars that way instead of like Star Trek over here. Or you can get those big scale battles by building an armada. And there's rules provided for that, including roles that your party may take in leading that armada, leading entire fleets. Lots of new pre-built ships are also provided, as well as new starship manufacturers. Now, the most important part of the book starts on page 138. This is where Paizo really attempts to help you make starship encounters fun for everyone. To quote the book, "Without your efforts as a GM to keep things engaging, an encounter could easily devolve into a dry, colorless affair of moving ship minis around a hex grid and firing at the enemy until one side is destroyed." Now, I would expand that responsibility to everyone at the table. The challenge is pretty obvious. It's a lot easier to add cinematic flair to an archer leaping over a river of lava and landing arrows into the chest of a rampaging Hydra than it is to a crew member sitting at a console redirecting power to the aft shields. So it does take more work on the part of everyone at the table to keep starship combat engaging and fast-paced. But if everyone involved is invested and knows the rules well, then it should be just as much, if not more fun than individual combat encounters. The Starship Operations Manual will give you storytelling and narrative advice on how to keep your encounters fun. And it details non-combat encounters that also feature the starship, which your players should have an emotional attachment to, including navigating debris fields or closing in on a dangerous celestial body to scan for a missing ship. And if starship combat really isn't popular at your table, it even gives you alternate ways for your players to approach combat encounters, including slipping by defense scouts, or taunting your opponents into surrender, or finding just the right time to slip through that hole in the enemy armada. The whole section is well worth a read, and I wish it was even longer, honestly. The last part of the book gives you a wide variety of story seeds to help inspire your own campaigns that would highlight your party's starship. You've got stories about chasing down valuable research, retrieving a stolen luxury ship, tracking down a loose bioweapon, investigating a massive starship-sized creature, unraveling a starship-focused pyramid scheme, freeing hostages from a dangerous cult, and tracking down an illegal fleet of racing starships. There are quite a few story seeds to choose from, each about 2 paragraphs long. But there's also entire campaign proposals that would take your characters from level 1 to level 12 and beyond, with recommendations for low, mid, and high-level adventures. Each of these recommendations is about a page long, and they're a good jumping off point if you want to write your own campaign, but would like a good narrative skeleton to help build from. All in all, this book does a lot to flesh out your starship's role in your adventures. Starships continue to be a tricky subject, and I think a lot of us are still grasping at ways of making starship combat encounters fun and engaging. If you study those last couple of chapters in the book, I think it'll help you with this. But one thing I really want to have is a well-designed player reference booklet or sheet for each role of a starship, one that includes the new options from this book as well. Some fans have created their own, some of which are better than others, but I still feel like it's a bit of a challenge for new players to wrap their minds around starship combat, and having a really good reference would be helpful. But even if you dislike starship combat, this book does an excellent job of expanding the types of stories and encounters that you can have with your ship outside of combat, and I'm betting that's what I'll end up taking the most from in this book. There are also a lot of great options in here for good story rewards, like taking that no-qual from Dead Suns and applying it to your ship's hull, or going to the planet Vartron, which is the home of the space otters known as the Bllrk, maybe completing an adventure for them and being rewarded with some algae shielding for your ship, which will filter out the radiation and also serve as a hydroponic garden. There's all sorts of good stuff like that in this book. I think this book is best for GMs who want to improve the role that the starship has in their campaigns, and for players who are already comfortable with the starship mechanics and who are ready to see what other possibilities are out there. It's a fun book to read through and will hopefully inspire a lot of good story ideas. It certainly made me rethink the starship mechanics and get excited about them again. The Starfinder Starship Operations Manual is available now for an MSRP of $39.99 for the hardcover print edition and $9.99 for the PDF version. It's part of the Starfinder role-playing game subscription through Paizo. The next book in the series is Alien Archive 4, which is expected in early November. Let me know what you think about Starfinder Starship encounters in the comment section down below. How have they been going in your campaigns? Thank you to our sponsor for this video, the Deck of Many, and their Big Bad Booklet series. The Big Bad Booklet is a monthly zine by the Deck of Many about boss monsters for 5th edition D&D that you can drop right into your ongoing campaigns. This month, come meet King Bllrk, a sentient gelatinous cube with a taste for the finer things in life and an army of chef goons at his disposal. King Bllrk, he'll make you an offer you can't refuse. Subscribe today at bigbadbooklet.com. Thank you for watching today. All your comments and video likes and subscriptions and shares help us grow the channel and keep our cameras rolling. As always, thank you for your continued support. Come and join us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram so we can interact. Stay safe out there, and I'll see you next time at the Gallant Goblin.